Avery Jones works at a museum. She restores old paintings. Her world is quiet. It's filled with the smell of varnish, cotton gloves, and neat brushes. She likes this silence. Everything is clear here. Her younger brother, Kyle, is ill. Treatment is extremely expensive. Avery saves every penny. But she still doesn't have the necessary funds. This thought constantly echoes in the background of her head, even in the quietest room of the museum. One evening, she's cleaning a small painting. The phone rings. An unknown number. "Hello? Miss Jones?" A man's voice, polite but cold. "This is Mr. L and Jihoon's representative speaking. Mr. L wishes to meet with you. He is proposing a business arrangement." Avery frowns. "I don't know him." "What agreement?" "An agreement that will solve all your financial problems, especially those related to your brother's treatment. The car will be waiting at the service entrance in 15 minutes. The line goes dead. Avery looks at the phone. Her stomach turns cold. How did they find out about Kyle? About the money? This is scary. She approaches the window. Exactly 15 minutes later, a long black car pulls up to the museum. A man in a formal suit gets out. He looks at the building as if he knows where to find her. Avery thinks about the bills from the clinic, about the hopelessness in Kyle's eyes. She has no choice. She puts on her coat and goes out. The car takes her to a quiet part of the city. They stop at a nondescript building. It's a private gallery. It's currently closed. The same man in the suit opens the door. Inside, it's quiet and empty. Only a few lamps are on, illuminating the paintings on the walls. A man stands in the center of the main hall. He leans on a cane. He stares at a large abstract painting without turning around. "Miss Jones," he says. His voice is quiet and calm. "Thank you for coming." He turns around. It's Lee and Jihoon. He's 27. He has a neat haircut and very attentive eyes. They immediately meet Avery's. He seems to see everything. Her fear, her fatigue, her wariness. He's dressed in an expensive but simple suit. He doesn't hide the fact that he uses a cane. He holds himself upright and reserved. "Mr. L," Avery says. Jihoon nods slightly. The man who brought her leaves silently. They are left alone. "Do you like art?" Jihoon asks, his gaze returning to the painting. "I'm restoring it. That's my job." "Recovery." He says the word thoughtfully. "Interesting. Let's talk." He invites her to sit down. He sits down opposite her. He places his cane next to her. He keeps the conversation clear and to the point. "Here's my proposal. I want to marry you. It will be an arranged marriage. For 5 years." Avery freezes. She didn't expect this. "Are you kidding?" "No. I need a wife to create the right image." "You're perfect. You have a good reputation. You're not involved in my business. You're smart. And you have a serious reason to agree, your brother." Avery remains silent. He's right. There is a reason. "What should I do?" she asks. "Live in my house. Appear with me in public occasionally. Play a role. That's all. No other obligations. You can continue working if you want." "What will I get?" "All debts for my brother's treatment will be paid off today. We'll provide him with the best doctors. An account will be opened for you. It will contain money for everything you need. In 5 years, after the divorce, you'll receive a larger sum. It will be enough for you and your brother for the rest of your lives." He lists the numbers. Avery sighs quietly. This isn't just money. This is salvation. This is Kyle's future. "What about our relationship?" Her voice became quieter. "Purely business. Your rooms will be separate. Your personal life is your business. I only demand compliance with the rules and loyalty. Nothing personal." Avery leaves the gallery. She's driven home. She sits in her small apartment and looks out the window. She thinks about Kyle. He's only 20. He needs to live. He needs to have a future. All her attempts to find money have been fruitless. Jihoon's offer sounds like a deal with a stranger. But what should she do? Refuse and watch her brother get worse? She has no choice. None at all. The next morning, she calls the number they left for her. "I agree," she says shortly. "Okay," the voice on the phone answers. "Everything will be arranged." 3 days later, Avery stands in a nearly empty marble hall. This isn't a wedding, it's a formality. Next to her is Jihoon in a dark suit. In front of them is an official. Behind them are 2 witnesses, his men in suits. No flowers, no music, no guests. Jihoon doesn't look at her. He stares ahead, his face calm. He pronounces the words of the oath clearly and without emotion, like reading a report. Avery does the same, her voice muffled in the empty room. The official pronounces them husband and wife. No one applauds. Jihoon nods. It's over. He turns to her. Now let's go, he says simply. The car drives a long way out of town. They enter a dense forest. Finally, high stone walls and metal gates appear. The gates open silently. The house is huge, modern, lots of glass and concrete. It looks like a fortress or a very expensive bunker. Nothing superfluous, nothing warm. The inside is also spacious, clean, and cold. All shades of gray, white, and black. No paintings, no knickknacks, just expensive furniture and emptiness. This is your home, says Jihoon. You can go anywhere except my office in the East Wing. Your things are already in your room on the second floor. He points his cane towards a wide staircase. Dinner will be brought to your room. I need to work. He turns and walks away, his steps quiet, his cane tapping lightly on the polished floor. Avery is left alone in the middle of the vast living room, feeling like a speck of sand in this cold, perfect space. She decides to look around. She climbs the stairs. The corridors are long and quiet. She notices the men. They stand motionless near certain doors in the alcoves of the corridors, all in identical dark suits. They don't look at her. They stare ahead, into space. When she passes by, they nod slightly, but their faces are expressionless. These aren't ordinary guards. These people are part of the house, part of the silence. They're like steel pillars embedded in the walls. Avery finds her room. It's large, with its own bathroom and a view of the forest. Her modest suitcases stand against the wall and seem out of place. She understands the main thing. This house is beautiful, but it is devoid of life. It is protected, but there is no comfort. She is a guest here under contract, and she is being watched from every corner. In the evening, dinner is indeed brought to her room on a tray. The food is delicious, exquisite, but eating alone is boring. It's getting dark outside. The forest becomes a black wall. A discreet light comes on inside the house. Avery gets ready for bed. She hears the quiet sounds of the house, the hum of systems, the almost silent footsteps in the hallway. She lies down on a large, empty bed. The room is strange. The air smells of cleanliness and loneliness. Before falling asleep, she clearly hears something behind the door. Quiet, measured footsteps. Someone walking back and forth in the hallway. More than once. This is duty, protection, observation. Avery closes her eyes. She thinks of Kyle. He'll get help now. That's good. She thinks of Jihoon, his empty gaze, his cold house. What is he thinking? What lies behind this silence? The footsteps outside the door never stop. They become the backdrop of her new world, the world she now lives in. A world of silence and steel. She falls asleep without finding answers. Avery wakes to an unusual silence. There's no city noise outside the window, only the chirping of birds somewhere far away in the forest. Sunlight falls on the perfectly smooth parquet floor. She goes downstairs. The dining room, with its long glass table, is already set for one person. And there stands Jihoon. He's looking at his tablet, leaning on his cane. Next to his plate lies a thin black envelope. "Good morning," he says, without taking his eyes off the screen. "Good morning," Avery replies. She sits down opposite him. A cup of coffee is placed in front of her. Jihoon puts down the tablet, picks up the envelope, and hands it to her across the table. "This is for you. A credit card, no limit. Use it for whatever you want. Clothes, jewelry, whatever." Avery takes the envelope. The card inside is heavy, matte, and devoid of numbers. Just a black rectangle. "Thank you," she says, not knowing what else to say. "There's one rule." His voice grows a little firmer. "Don't ask questions. Don't ask where the money came from. Don't ask about my affairs. Don't ask about the people you might see here. Your life is here now, within these walls. The rest is none of your business. Is that understood?" He looks at her. His gaze is not angry, but very serious. Avery says quietly. She places the card next to her plate. It feels scorchingly cold. Jihoon nods, takes his cane and stands up. "My man, Yeonjin, will accompany you if you want to go out into the city or the garden. All the best." He leaves. Avery sits alone at the huge table. She drinks coffee and stares at the black card. Wealth she could never have dreamed of. And the first rule, silence. After breakfast, Avery decides to explore the house. She wants to get a sense of where she is. She walks around the first floor. There's a living room, a library with empty shelves, a movie theater, and several other unfurnished rooms. She approaches the passage to the east wing. The corridor here is narrower, the lighting dim. At the end, a single door is visible. It's massive, made of dark wood. Avery walks down the hallway, just curious. What could possibly be in the only room in the entire wing? She's almost there. Her hand reaches for the handle. Mrs. L.I. She flinches and turns around. One of the guards has appeared next to her, as if out of thin air. The older one. His face is inscrutable. This part of the house is closed, he says politely, but his voice leaves no room for argument. I just wanted to see. This is prohibited. Please return to the main part of the house. He doesn't move, but his entire posture says, back. Avery feels a shiver run down her spine. It's not a request. It's an order. Okay, she says. She turns and leaves. She feels his gaze on her back. He stands and watches until she leaves the hallway. The invisible walls in this house turn out to be very real. Avery can't sleep that night. She leaves her room to go down to the kitchen for water. She walks down a dark corridor. From the window on the stairs, part of the courtyard, illuminated by powerful lanterns, is visible. Something is happening down below. Avery pauses behind the curtain and looks down. Two black cars pull into the courtyard. Young Jin and two other men emerge from the first. A young man emerges from the second. He's about 25 years old. His clothes are rumpled, his face pale, his eyes wide with fear. He looks around like a cornered animal. Ji-hoon walks out of the house onto the porch. He walks slowly down the steps, leaning on his cane. He stops in front of the young man. He says something quietly. Avery doesn't hear the words. The young man begins speaking quickly, pleadingly. He folds his hands as if praying. Ji-hoon listens, motionless. His face, in the lantern light, seems like a stone mask. Then Ji-hoon gives Youngjin a slight nod. Youngjin takes the frightened boy by the elbow and leads him into the house. Past the window where Avery is standing, she jumps back into the darkness, pressing herself against the wall. Her heart is pounding. She's just seen what she was told not to ask about. Avery walks silently back down the hallway. She hears voices coming from behind Ji-hoon's office door. The door is slightly open. She shouldn't be eavesdropping, but she can't bring herself to leave. Her feet feel rooted to the floor. Ji-hoon's voice, quiet and cold. Your duty is your family's duty. Do you understand that? The quiet, broken voice of the other guy. I understand, sir. Please. I have a mother. That's why you're here and not somewhere else, Ji-hoon says. There's a sound like a hand being run across a table. You were forgiven. Once. Just once. Thank you. But the job must be done. You will pay it all back. Not with money. With service. You will work for me now. You will do what I say. You will be loyal as a dog. And if you make another mistake, Ji-hoon pauses, the family will answer for you, with their entire future. Understood? I see. Very clearly. The boy's voice was full of relief and horror at the same time. Take him away. Settle him. Quick steps. Avery jumps away from the door and runs silently toward her room. She closes the door and leans her back against it. Debt. Family. One-time forgiveness. The words swirl around in her head. This is the world she now lives in. A world of debts that aren't repaid with money. And here, forgiveness seems more terrible than punishment. The next morning at breakfast, Avery is silent. She can't take her eyes off Ji-hoon. He's eating toast, reading the news on his tablet. A perfectly ordinary morning, as if nothing happened last night. Suddenly, he puts down the tablet. How is your brother, Kyle? He asks. The question is so unexpected that Avery is taken aback. He's better. Thank you. The money for the treatment has arrived. What illness does he have? Ji-hoon looks at her. There's no curiosity in his eyes, only businesslike interest. Avery explains briefly. Ji-hoon listens attentively. These doctors are good, he says when she finishes, but not the best. He picks up the phone and dials. Young Jin, find the top 3 specialists in the world who specialize in Kyle Jones's condition. Contact them. Arrange a consultation. Immediately. He hangs up and looks back at Avery. Now he'll have the best. Avery is at a loss for words. It's a kind gesture, but it's done as coldly and efficiently as everything else in this house. Emotionless, like an order to buy new furniture. Why? She blurts out. That wasn't part of the terms. Ji-hoon shrugs. You're part of my image now. A healthy, happy family. A sick relative on my wife's side ruins the picture. It's practical. He picks up his tablet again. The conversation is over. Avery looks down at her plate. Kindness here is just another business transaction. Yeonjin approaches her. Mrs. Lee, Mr. Lee asked me to show you a room. Please follow me. He leads her to another part of the house, the basement. But this isn't a dark cellar. It's a spacious, bright room with large floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the garden. Avery pauses in the doorway. This is a professional restoration studio. Tables are equipped with powerful lamps. Brushes, scalpels, jars of solutions, and pigments are neatly arranged on the shelves. Everything is the best imaginable. And against the far wall are several paintings in old frames, waiting to be worked on. Mr. L ordered this set up for you, says Yongin. He knew about your profession. The paintings were collected from various places. They need restoration. If anything is missing, let me know. He bows and leaves, leaving her alone. Avery slowly enters the room. She runs her fingers over the handle of the metal table, over the soft brush. This is her world, a world she understands. Jihoon brought it here, to this cold fortress. It was the most personal gift he could give, and at the same time, the most practical. Now she had something to do. She wouldn't be bored or asking questions. She would be here, in this room, helpful and quiet. She feels a strange mixture of gratitude and chilling understanding. He's calculated everything, down to the last in detail. During the day, Avery decides to go out into the garden. The fresh air will help her think. As soon as she approaches the exit, Youngjin appears next to her. I'll keep you company, Mrs. L. That's not necessary, Avery says. Mr. L's orders, for your safety. There's no point in arguing. They leave together. The garden is huge and well kept. Perfect paths, trimmed bushes. Everything is too neat, not a single fallen leaf. Yunjin walks 2 steps behind, silently. Have you been working for Mr. L for long? Avery tries to start a conversation. Yes, Mrs. L. You are more than a security guard, aren't you? I help Mr. L with his business, he answers evasively. They pass by a tall fountain. The water makes noise. What happened to that young man last night? Avery asks. Unable to contain herself, she immediately bites her tongue. Rule, no questions. Yunjin stops, his face expressionless. I can't discuss Mr. L's affairs, and I wouldn't advise you to do the same, Mrs. L. For your own peace of mind, let's enjoy the walk instead. He gestures with his hand, inviting them to move on. The conversation is over. Avery looks out at the forest beyond the high fence. She can walk, breathe the fresh air. She has everything, but she's always under surveillance. The outer walls of the house are high, but the inner, invisible ones are even higher. And slowly but surely, they begin to feel like a cage. Walks with young Jin become a daily ritual. Avery realizes this is her only contact with anyone who might know something. He's polite, but silent as a wall. She decides to proceed cautiously. The next day in the garden, she tries again. It's beautiful here, but very quiet. Has Jihoon always lived in places like this? She asks, looking at the fountain. Young Jin walks next to him, his hands folded behind his back. Mr. L has several residences. This one is the most peaceful. He seems very focused on work. Has he always been like this? Mr. L is a man of duty. He took on great responsibility at a young age. Avery detects a cautiousness in his words. He's not saying too much, but he's not keeping quiet either. Did he achieve a lot on his own? She continues. Young Jin slows down for a second. His family had a business. Mr. L expanded it. He has earned great respect in business circles. People know that his word carries weight, and that he is fair. The word fair sounds strange after the scene with the frightened young man. What about his parents? Do they help with the business? There's a long pause. Young Jin stares straight ahead. His parents died, a tragic accident. It was a long time ago. Since then, Mr. L has been running everything himself. He built what we have now. Young Jin's voice is even, but Avery feels the topic is closed. Dead. I'm sorry, she says quietly. Young Jin simply gives a short nod. He's respected for his strength, he adds, as if drawing the line. That's the most important thing. In the business world, strength and respect. Everything else is irrelevant. The conversation ends there. Avery understands that Young Jin won't betray Jihoon. He offers only general, almost official statements. But even from them, the contours of immense power and a lonely burden emerge. One afternoon, Jihoon leaves on business. The house becomes even more oppressively quiet. Avery decides to peek into the library. It had seemed completely empty to her before. She notices that one of the lower cabinets built into the wall is slightly ajar. She goes over and opens it completely. There are no books inside. There are several old boxes and one large leather album with a cracked binding. Avery looks around. No one. She picks up the album and sits on the floor by the window. She opens it. The first pages are black and white photographs. A young Korean couple. the woman in an elegant dress, the man in a formal suit. They are smiling, but their eyes seem tired. On the next page, they are the same, but with a little boy. He is serious, with large, dark eyes. Ji-hoon! He is about 5 years old. Avery's heart skips a beat. She sees life. There's a picnic, a boy trying to blow out a candle on a cake, a school assembly. Her parents are always nearby, but their smiles are always reserved, as if there's a shadow always lurking just beyond the frame. Then the photos turn to color. Ji-hoon is a teenager. He barely smiles anymore. He stands straight, his arms at his sides. His parents look older, more serious. The last photo shows them all together in the garden of a large house. Ji-hoon is about 16. He looks straight into the camera. His gaze seems familiar, the same penetrating, appraising gaze of an adult. And that's it. The rest of the pages are blank. Avery carefully turns the last completed page. Taped to the back is a newspaper clipping in Korean. Next to it is a printed English translation. A short note. A tragic accident claimed the lives of prominent businessman Lee and his wife. Their only son, Lee Ji-hoon, 17, survived and was hospitalized with serious injuries. Injuries, Kane, it all fits together. Avery closed the album. She felt sad. She saw a story. The story of a boy who became who he is because everything he had was taken away in one night. He wasn't born into this cold fortress. He built it around himself. After his old world collapsed, she puts the album back in the closet and closes the door. Now, Ji-hoon isn't just an impersonal force to her. He's a person with a past, with pain, and this knowledge frightens her even more. That evening, tension fills the house. The guards, usually invisible, are now more visible in their positions. Youngjin paces the first floor, giving quiet orders. Ji-hoon is back. He's sitting in his office, his face gloomy. Avery is about to head into her workshop when 3 luxury cars pull up to the front door. Not like Ji-hoon's, more ornate. Youngjin appears silently next to her. Mrs. Lee. Mr. Lee asks for your presence. Please sit in the living room and do something. Read. Don't engage in conversation. Just be here. Avery nods and sits down in the chair by the fireplace, picking up the first magazine she comes across. Her heart is pounding. 3 men enter the house. 2 are elderly, 1 is middle-aged. They are dressed in expensive suits, but their appearance is garish. Large rings, bright ties. They are noisy, talking loudly, but their laughter seems false. Ji-hoon comes out into the hallway to meet them. He doesn't smile. He simply tilts his head slightly. Gentlemen, unexpected. Ji-hong, young eagle, the oldest of the guests, a man with gray hair, says loudly. We stopped by on the way to discuss our common affairs. We should have discussed this on Friday, at the appointed time. Ji-hoon's voice was icy. Time is money. Why wait? The man clapped Ji-hoon on the shoulder. Ji-hoon didn't even flinch, only his gaze grew even colder. He leads the guests into the office. Before closing the door, his gaze briefly meets Avery's. There's a warning and a cold confidence in it. The door closes. The house is silent again, but now it's echoing, thick, like before a storm. Avery sits in the chair and feels a shiver run down her spine. These people aren't partners. They're enemies, here to test her. And Ji-hoon knows it. 20 minutes pass. Avery can't sit still. She quietly approaches the office door. Voices can be heard coming from inside. At first, everyone speaks calmly, but gradually, the guest's tone becomes more and more insolent and demanding. Nan, your share has always been 20%, Ji-hoon. The market is growing. It's time to reconsider the agreement. We think we should split it equally. You, of course, will get 10%. You understand, young man, that you can't handle such a volume on your own. Ji-hoon's voice. It was still quiet, but there was a steel in it. The agreement was signed in my parents' time. It hasn't changed since they left, and it won't change now. Your parents were wise people, but times have changed, came the voice of another guest, sharper. Do you think your little army, here in the forest, can make a difference? There are greater forces out there. Avery hears a faint sound, like Ji-hoon placing his cane on the floor. You came into my house, Ji-hoon says. His voice now sounds like a naked blade slowly drawing across glass. He doesn't raise his voice, but every word carries such a quiet, absolute menace that Avery catches her breath. You came uninvited. You talk to me about remaking something you didn't build. You allow yourself to be threatened. There is dead silence in the office. We weren't making any threats. We were simply stating the facts. The first voice tries to say something, but it no longer has the same confidence. Zihoon interrupts, each word carefully enunciated. You will receive your 20%, as always, and you will be grateful for this opportunity, because that big power you speak of knows that if I remove my small army from the forest, your stream will turn into a puddle of mud within a week. You exist because I allow it, for as long as I allow it. This is my final offer, and my final warning. The next conversation will not be here, and not with me. It will be conducted by people who are not in the habit of talking. The chair is pushed back with a bang. Hurried, nervous footsteps are heard. The office door swings open. Avery barely manages to jump back into the chair. The guests leave. Their faces are red, their eyes darting. They don't even look in her direction. They walk quickly to the exit, silently. All their arrogant air has vanished. Zahoon stands in the doorway of the office. He leans on his cane and watches the cars drive away. His face is the same stone mask, but something icy and merciless has frozen at the corners of his lips. The mask falls for a moment, and Avery sees the true owner of this house. Not just a rich invalid, not just a business partner, but a man whose quiet word can break others, and who is not afraid to speak it. He turns his head and sees her. His gaze softens, becoming simply tired. The mask returns to its place. Sorry to bother you, he says evenly. Business disagreements. They won't happen again. He turns and walks into the office. Indianievs, closing the door. Avery is left alone in the vast, quiet living room. She now knows the truth. Her husband is more than just a trillionaire. He is a man who rules with more than just money, and his calm is the calm of a tiger who knows he is the strongest in the forest. Several days have passed since the uninvited guest's visit. The house has returned to its usual strict order. Avery tries not to think about what she heard. She spends much of her time in her studio, immersed in work on a small 19th-century landscape painting. It's calming. One afternoon, she decides to take a stroll around the house to stretch her legs. She already knows all the hallways and rooms she's allowed to visit. Almost automatically, her feet carry her to the passageway to the east wing. She's already accustomed to the fact that there's a guard at the end of that narrow corridor, and the door is always locked. But today, everything is different. The corridor is empty, not a single guard, and that same massive wooden door at the end is ajar. A dark gap is visible between the door and the frame. Avery stops. Her heart starts beating faster. Rule: don't go there. The guard's orders. Her mind tells her to turn around and leave, but curiosity is stronger, much stronger. What could Jihoon be hiding in the only room in an entire wing? Weapons? Documents? Something forbidden? She slowly approaches the door, listens. Complete silence. She pushes the door a little harder. It opens silently, on well-oiled hinges. Avery looks inside. She expects to see an office, safes, and an armory. But this is not an office. It's a large room, bathed in soft light from the tall windows. And every wall, from floor to ceiling, is covered with children's drawings, watercolors, pencil drawings, bright and dull, drawings of houses, the sun, animals, family. Pinned between the drawings are photographs, lots of photographs, black and white and color. They show elderly people, young families, and children again, many children of different ages, Koreans, Europeans, Latin Americans. In some photos, people are smiling at the camera. In others, they look serious. All these faces look down at Avery from the walls. A large wooden table stands in the middle of the room. On it are neat stacks of folders, a few laptops, no papers in disarray. Against one wall is a simple sofa and 2 armchairs. Nothing luxurious. This place feels private, quiet, completely different from the rest of the house. Avery enters, carefully closing the door behind her. She approaches the nearest wall. She examines the drawing. It shows a yellow house, green grass, and 5 stick figures. In the corner, in childish letters, is the caption, Misha, 7 years old, and the date, 2 years ago. There's a photograph nearby. It shows the same boy, older, with a woman, probably his mother. They're standing in front of a small flower shop. Both are smiling. Avery moves on to the next photograph. An elderly couple in traditional Korean dress. They are sitting on the veranda of a small house. They look relaxed. She slowly walks around the room. Hundreds of faces, hundreds of lives. It doesn't feel like a collection. It feels like an archive of other people's lives, all somehow important to Jihoon. Her gaze falls on the table. An open folder lies on one of the stacks. She hadn't intended to approach, but it was already there. She had already broken the rule. Avery approaches the desk. An open folder holds financial reports, not dry accounting statements, but simple lists, with photos, names, stories. She is reading. The Petrov family. Payment. Treatment for their daughter, Anastasia, 9, for oncology. Completed treatment at a Swiss clinic. Remission. Monthly rehabilitation allowance. The Lee and Minho family. Payment. Repayment of debts from a business destroyed by the conflict. Providing funds to open a new workshop. The Garcia family. Payment. Full support for 2 children after the loss of a breadwinner. Education and housing until adulthood. Next folder. Next. All the same. Medical bills, tuition fees, startup capital for small cafes, repair shops, farms. The amounts varied, from very large to modest. Everything was carefully documented. Each folder was accompanied by recent photos of the recipients, like a report. Zihoon doesn't keep his business secrets here. He keeps receipts. Receipts for paying for other people's misfortunes. Avery picks up one of the folders at random. She begins to carefully read not only the lines about payments, but also the small notes in the margins, written in neat handwriting. At first, she hadn't noticed them. The row with the last name Kim. Father died in a collision at a northern warehouse. December. Responsibility, our clan. And then details of payments to the family. On another page, son injured while delivering goods to competitors. March. Collateral damage. Responsibility, Pack clan. Intervention and compensation on our behalf. Also, the family business was ruined by pressure from our debt collectors last year. We will be rebuilding it. With each new mark, a terrifying picture forms in Avery's mind. These people aren't just strangers he's helping out of kindness. They're the families of those who suffered, caught in the wheels of his world. Collision, delivery, pressure, euphemisms that evoke broken destinies, ruined lives, and perhaps worse. He doesn't help random people. He helps those affected by his business, or by the business of his enemies. He pays the price for his influence, for the influence of his clan, for the cruelty of the world of which he is a part. She frantically flips through the other folders. They're all the same. A brief note about an incident and a detailed plan to help the family. It's a system, clear, streamlined, hidden from everyone. Avery steps back from the table, her hands shaking. She looks at the walls, covered with children's smiles and drawings. She sees them differently now. These are not just the good deeds of a rich man. This is atonement. It's a quiet, secret way to repay a debt. A debt that can't be measured in money. A debt for lost fathers, crippled sons, shattered hopes. It can't bring back lives or erase pain, but it can pay for treatment, provide an education, and secure a future. And he does it. Systematically. Secretly. Shock paralyzes her. The image of Jihoon splits in two. On one side, a cold, threatening boss whose very words make her tremble. On the other, a man sitting in this quiet room, looking at photographs of children whose parents he, directly or indirectly, destroyed. He doesn't just take, he gives back. Everything he can. And the realization of this is both terrifying and deeply shocking. In this cruel world he rules, he has created his own twisted brand of justice. I thought you were here. The voice comes from right behind her, quiet, calm, without a single note of surprise. Avery whirls around. Jihoon stands in the doorway, leaning on his cane. His face is an impenetrable mask. No anger, no irritation, nothing. He just looks at her. His gaze glides over the open folder on the desk, over her pale, shocked face. She freezes, like a wild animal caught red-handed. Her throat goes dry. She searches for words, for an excuse, but finds nothing. The door was open, she finally breathes out. I know, he says. The guard was called away for a minute. I saw you on the cameras. I wanted to see if you'd come in. So, was this a trap or a test? Avery feels a cold sweat run down her back. Jihoon slowly enters the room. He leisurely approaches the desk and closes the folder she was reading. He does so carefully, without looking at her. I'm sorry you saw that, he says in the same even tone. He walks up to the wall and looks at one of the children's drawings. He's silent for a long time. It's none of your business, Avery, he finally says. It's mine. Personal. Why? She blurts out. Her voice is hoarse. Why all this? These people. The notes. Jihoon turns to face her, his eyes dark and deep. In the world I live in, there's a bill to pay. There's always a bill to pay. For every action, for every word. These people, he makes a slight gesture with his hand toward the walls. Their bills turned out to be too high. Not their fault. I pay their bills. Do you feel guilty? She asks bluntly. He winces a little, as if he doesn't like the word guilty. I feel responsible. My decisions, my family's decisions, the actions of my people, they create waves. These waves sometimes wash away other people's boats. I can't stop the ocean, but I can try to help those whose boats capsized so that their children don't drown. He says it as simply as if he were discussing logistics. But that's hypocritical. You inflict pain and then pay the consequences. For the first time, something resembling emotion appears on his face. Something tired and bitter, perhaps. Or maybe this is the only possible order in chaos. If I stop causing pain, I'll be wiped out in 5 minutes. And then there will be no one to pay these bills. Everything will collapse. And these children, he points to the drawings, will be left with nothing. The choice is often not between good and evil, but between the greater and the lesser evil. This is my choice. He comes closer. He looks at her intently. Now you know, and I ask you one thing. Forget you ever saw this room. Never come here again. Never talk about this with anyone, not even with young Jin. For you, this room doesn't exist. That's the condition of our agreement. The new condition. There's no threat in his voice, just a cold, undeniable statement of fact. Avery whispers. Ji-hoon looks down for a second. Then our agreement will end. You'll get your money, but your brother will lose his best doctors, and I can't guarantee you'll find these photos instructive. Protecting your reality is also part of my responsibility. Understood? He asks this without malice, like a doctor explaining the risks of an operation. Avery looks at him, at this enigmatic, contradictory man, at the tyrant and the benefactor all rolled into one. She nods, speechless. Okay, says Ji-hoon. Let's go back. The dinner's probably cold by now. He waits for her to leave the room first, then follows. The door closes with a soft click. Avery hears the key turn in the lock. She stands in an empty hallway. The world around her will never be the same again, and she is now part of this double life, part of a quiet room with drawings that officially doesn't exist. They walk back to the main part of the house. Avery's steps are hesitant. She still feels shaky in her knees. Ji-hoon walks beside her, his cane keeping a steady rhythm. His face is once again covered by the usual calm mask, but now Avery knows what lies beneath. They walk into the small breakfast room. There are indeed 2 plates of food on the table, now cold. Avery doesn't feel hungry. She sits down and looks at him. He sits down opposite. He takes a fork, but doesn't eat. He waits. Why? She asks again, the same question that had been circling the room before. But now she's asking not about the system, but about him. Why did you even start doing this? Ji-hoon puts down his fork. He looks past her, out the window, at the darkening forest. The pause stretches. He seems to be deciding whether to tell the truth or brush it off. So the account doesn't go into the red, he finally says. His voice is quiet, almost tired. Avery remains silent, letting him continue. When my parents died, he begins, not looking at her, I was left alone, with a huge business on my hands, and a huge number of unpaid bills. Not just financial ones, bills to people. Some of them worked for my parents and suffered. Some just got in the way. I was young, angry. I didn't care. He pauses, takes a glass of water, but does not drink. Then the problem started. Betrayals, losses. I realized something simple. If you only take without giving back, sooner or later, everyone will turn against you. Even fear has its limits. But if you balance the books, if you make sure your account with the world doesn't go into deep minus, you have a chance. Not for love, for understanding, for silent loyalty, for the fact that in the most difficult moment, someone won't stab you in the back because they remember that you helped their child. He finally looks at her. It's not kindness, Avery. It's a survival strategy. The most reliable one I know. I maintain balance, cold calculation. That's the whole answer. But Avery hears more than just calculation in his words. She hears echoes of the lonely boy in the photograph who lost everything overnight and is now trying to build some kind of system of justice in a world bereft of it. Cold calculation doesn't force us to keep children's drawings on the wall, she says quietly. Ji-hoon flinches, as if he's been touched in a sore spot. He stands up abruptly, leaning on his cane. Enough questions for today. Eat. You need strength. He walks out of the dining room, leaving her alone with his confession and her cold dinner. From that day on, something changes. Avery no longer fears Jihoon as much as she once did. She understands him, understands the weight he carries. His coldness no longer seems cruel to her, but armor that protects not only him, but also the fragile, monstrous balance he has created. He, in turn, stops ignoring her completely. He doesn't become affectionate or open. No. But now, over breakfast, he sometimes asks about her work in the studio. Briefly, matter-of-factly. She talks about problems with the paint on an old painting. The next day, he sends a catalog of rare pigments through Young Jin. The silence between them is different now. Before, it was awkward, strained. Now it's the silence of two people who have learned something important about each other and don't know what to do with it. But there's a touch of respect in it, a silent understanding. One evening, she stayed late in the studio. As she was leaving, she almost bumped into him in the hallway. He was wearing lounge clothes, no jacket, and looked tired. "Still working?" he asked. "Yes, it's hard to pick a color." "Take your time," he said, and after a pause added, "Thank you for doing this." And he left. It was unexpected, and it meant more than all his expensive gifts. A week passed. Zihoon invited her to his office after dinner. Not the secret one, but the official one, with a large ebony desk. He sat behind it. In front of him lay a small folder made of thick paper. He opened it. Inside, under a transparent protective film, lay a sheet of paper, or rather, what was left of it. It was a child's drawing, badly damaged by time, and apparently water. Faint outlines were discernible. Perhaps a house, perhaps a tree. The paper was yellowed, torn at the edges. The colors almost faded. Zihoon looked at the drawing, his face serious. "I want to ask you for a favor," he said, without looking up. "Not by agreement. Personally." "What is it?" Avery asked, coming closer. "This is my first painting. I painted it for my parents. I was 7 years old." He carefully ran his finger over the film without touching it. "It was in my car. In that car. It was found in the rubble. I've kept it ever since." Avery held her breath as she stared at the pathetic remains of the drawing. "I can't. I don't know if anything can be done," she said honestly. "The paper is badly damaged." "I know, but you're the best restorer I know. I saw your work in the museum. Before we met." He finally looked at her. There was no usual confidence in his eyes. There was vulnerability, a real plea. "Try, please. If it doesn't work, I'll understand." Avery looked at the drawing, then at him. She nodded. "I'll try, but I need special materials, and time. Lots of time." The corners of his lips twitched, almost in a smile. "You have everything you need, and all the time in the world." From that day on, their life took on a new rhythm. During the day, Avery worked on a painting from the studio, and in the evenings, after dinner, they would go down to her studio together. Jihoon would sit on a high chair in the corner and watch. Sometimes he brought documents with him, but more often he simply watched her work. At first, it was quiet. Then he started asking questions, technical ones, about the chemical composition of solvents, about types of paper, about how light affects pigments. His interest was deep and specific. And then, one day, he started talking, not about business, about the painting. "I remember there was a big sun here," he said quietly, looking at the shapeless yellow spot in the corner. "I used all the yellow paint." Mom laughed. Avery didn't answer. She simply worked with the finest brush, trying to reinforce the edges of the tear. "And here, I think it was our dog, Becky's dog. He was huge and fluffy. He spoke in fragments, recalling fragments of that day, of that life." His voice was devoid of emotion, but the memories themselves were so melancholy that Avery's heart sank. She saw a different person in him, not a boss, not a calculating strategist, but a boy who wanted to reclaim the only surviving piece of his lost world. His determination at this was astounding. He studied restoration literature to understand the process. He could sit motionless for hours, simply watching the outline of the old line emerge beneath her hands. They rarely discussed personal matters. Their conversation revolved around work, but this shared, quiet purpose held a greater intimacy than any conversation. She saw his mask melt in the dim light of the workshop, lit only by the bright lamp over the table. She saw him forget to lean on his cane as he stood next to her, and then he'd catch himself, his face momentarily contorted with pain. Not physical, but something deeper. He was vulnerable, and he trusted her with it. For the first time, they were already working late. It was around midnight. The house was completely silent. Suddenly, the silence was shattered by a soft but clear alarm, not a wail, but a series of short, alarming beeps. And immediately, the lights went out. The workshop and the entire house were engulfed in darkness. Avery yelped in surprise. Sihun commanded instantly. His voice rang out in the darkness, firm and calm. She heard him pick up his cane and stand. Quick, light footsteps were heard outside the workshop door. The door opened. In the doorway, illuminated by the flickering emergency light in the hallway, stood Young Jin. In his hands was a compact pistol. "The group is in the area, minimum 6 people, south wall," he reported without emotion. "Shadow protocol," Zihoon snapped. "Avery is with me." "Zihoon, what?" she began, but he interrupted. "Shut up and do as you're told, now!" Young Jin stepped forward. "I know," took Avery by the elbow, and gently but firmly pulled him along. Jihoon walked beside him, his movements in the darkness surprisingly quick and precise, despite his cane. They were led through a hidden passageway in the library wall. Avery hadn't even suspected its existence, to a small, fortified bunker-like shell inside the house. It was a windowless room with monitors displaying live camera feeds. Zihoon sat in front of the screens, his face as focused as a surgeon's. Avery watched the monitors. She saw dark figures scurry silently across the garden. She saw Jihoon's men emerge from behind trees, from rocks, from the very ground. They didn't run toward them. They appeared in the attacker's path when they were already trapped. The guards' movements were synchronized, silent, and deadly effective. This wasn't a fight. This was an incapacitation. Quick, quiet, without unnecessary noise. She watched as Jihoon gave quiet commands into the microphone. In a single word, "Left! Back! Take!" His men responded instantly. Avery couldn't believe her eyes. She knew he had security, but what she saw wasn't security. It was a highly professional private army, operating with frightening coherence. 10 minutes later, it was all over. The monitors showed huddled figures in black. Zihoon's men stood motionless above them, awaiting orders. "Get this out of the area. Find out who sent it," Zihoon said calmly, and turned off the microphone. He turned to Avery. She was pale and shaking. "It's over. They didn't break into the house. It was a test. A weak one." "Weak?" she breathed out. "Yes. A real attack would have looked different. This is just a failed attempt. The competitors are nervous after our last conversation." The light in the room flickered softly. Everything was quiet, as if nothing had happened. They emerged from the bunker. The lights were on in the house, but the silence was different. Tension hung in it. Yeonjin walked up to Jihoon, his face hard. "Sir, there are losses. On our side. Minso." He was at the southern post. Jihoon froze. His face remained unchanged, but his eyes turned like black ice. "Wounded?" "No, sir. He died on the spot." Avery covered her mouth with her hand. Minseo, the young man who sometimes stood guard at her door. He always smiled at her, nodded. He was about 25. Jihoon walked slowly into the office. Avery, unsure of what to do, followed him. Young Jin followed behind. Zihoon sat down at the table. He placed his hands on the tabletop, interlaced his fingers, and stared straight ahead. "Did he have a family?" he asked calmly. "Yes, sir. Wife, daughter, born 3 weeks ago." Avery felt a lump rise in her throat. 3 weeks. Zihoon closed his eyes for a second. Then he opened them. Full support. The apartment becomes the wife's full property. A trust fund for the daughter. Education, healthcare, everything. Plus monthly payments 5 times his salary. Arrange a meeting. I'll tell her this in person. "Sir, that's very generous," Yongin remarked cautiously. Jihoon's voice was lifeless. "It's a debt. My debt. He died on my soil defending my home. His debt to me has been more than paid. Now, my debt to him, and to his daughter. I will pay it for the rest of my days." He looked at Avery. His gaze held the same heaviness as the day he'd spoken of balance. The balance had been disrupted again, and he was already calculating new numbers to restore it. "Yeonjin, bring me Minseo's file, and prepare the documents. Now!" Yeonjin nodded and left. Zihong sat alone at the enormous table. He didn't look defeated. He looked incredibly tired, and infinitely lonely in his ruler's chair, where every victory and every loss weighed on his shoulders like a heavy, invisible weight. Avery quietly left, leaving him alone with his new debt. She now understood the price of his balance. A price paid not only by his attackers, a price paid by his own people, too. And he bore this burden, allowing himself neither weakness nor regret, only cold, ruthless calculation to keep the account from slipping into the red. Jihoon doesn't leave his office until morning. The light under the door stays on all night. Avery sees this when she can't sleep and goes out to get water. At breakfast this morning, he looks as usual. A clean suit, perfectly styled hair, a calm face. But there are dark shadows under his eyes that weren't there before. He sips coffee in silence, scrolling through documents on his tablet. Young Jin brings over a thick folder and places it next to him. Jihoon opens it. Inside are dozens of pages of text and graphs. Is that all? He asks, without looking up. Yes, sir. All fund options, investments, tax plans, payments, real estate, educational plans until the child reaches adulthood. Jihoon begins reading. Every page. He makes notes in the margins with a thin silver pencil. Occasionally, he asks a question in a quiet, even voice. What if inflation is 5%? These stocks are too volatile. Replace them with conservative bonds. Add a clause about comprehensive health insurance for all family members, including extended family members. Avery sits across from her, watching. His face is the stony mask of a professional, not a trace of emotion. This is work. Important, precise, painstaking work. But she sees his eyes. A quiet, cold storm rages in them. Not anger, not sadness. Something deeper. A fury directed inward. A sense of responsibility that presses down with the force of a mountain. He doesn't just give away money. He builds an entire financial fortress around the lives of two people he's never met. He guarantees that the deceased's daughter will never experience poverty, that she'll have the best teachers, doctors, and opportunities, that his wife will be able to live without working if she chooses. He covers every possible gap, every risk. He calculates this debt with the same meticulousness with which his men neutralize the attackers. Here, in paragraph 4.3, the wording is too vague, he says, pointing at the text with a pencil. Rewrite it. It should be clear. Payments are made monthly, for life, with annual indexation according to the official inflation rate plus 2%. I don't want them to receive the same amounts in 10 years as they do now. Sir, that's a very generous indexation, Yeonjin notes cautiously. It's not generosity. Jihoon's voice is as even as a blade. It's justice. He paid the highest price. We'll pay in kind. Youngjin nods and takes the folder for revision. Jihoon leans back in his chair. He closes his eyes for a moment. When he opens them, the storm within them has subsided slightly, giving way to an icy, weary determination. She's arriving today at 4, he says, mostly to himself. I'll have to tell her. Avery understands who he's talking about. The widow. Avery retreats to her studio but can't concentrate. She stares at an old childhood drawing of Jihoon's that they were working on together. The outline of the sun is barely visible. Her world had been turned upside down. She thought she'd entered a world of pure evil, a world of money, power, and cruelty. Then she saw the room with the drawings, an island of strange, painful goodness. Then she witnessed the cold efficiency of violence. And now she sees how this violence gives birth to a new debt, a new responsibility, a new gigantic wave. Of goodness? Or is this just another turn in an endless calculation? Good and evil are not enemies here. They are two ends of the same sword. They are inseparable. The brutality of a nighttime attack directly led to one little girl receiving a chance at a bright future, thanks to her father's death, by order of the man who will now ensure her life. This is monstrous. It's beyond comprehension. And at the center of this maelstrom is Jihoon. He is the axis, the point where all the lines converge. He makes decisions that shatter lives, and he bears the brunt of the consequences. He doesn't dump it on others. He stores it in folders, in numbers, in contracts. He bears this burden silently, without complaint. Avery thinks about his eyes at breakfast, about that storm. He's not an unfeeling machine. He feels everything, and he deliberately freezes those feelings, turning them into cold, precise actions, because otherwise, the burden would crush him. It would crush anyone. She looks at her hands, at the brushes, at the paints. Her world was simple, bringing back to life what time has damaged. His world is fixing what he and others damage every day, and paying the endless bills. What is she doing here? She's a pawn in his image-making game. But right now, she feels less like a pawn. She feels like a witness, the only person who sees both sides, who's seen the room with the drawings, who's heard him talk about balance. and she must make a choice. To stay in his own, should I stay in the safe shadows and pretend I don't know anything? Or step forward? An oppressive silence reigned in the house in the evening. Minseo's widow had arrived during the day. Avery watched from afar as Ji-hoon personally escorted the young woman, holding the baby, into the study. They stayed there for over an hour. Then he walked her to her car. His face was inscrutable, but as he looked at the sleeping child, there was something elusively soft in his eyes, and infinitely sad. Avery waits. She waits for him to be alone, for the mask to fit snugly again. After dinner, which they again ate in silence, he goes into the office. Avery gives him time. Half an hour. Then she approaches the heavy door. She doesn't knock. She just opens the door and walks in. Ji-hoon sits at his desk in the semi-darkness. The desk lamp illuminates only the stacks of papers in front of him. He isn't working. He simply sits, staring into space. His cane leans against the chair. He slowly looks up at her. There's emptiness in his eyes. Complete, bottomless fatigue. Avery, do you need something? No, she says firmly. She closes the door and goes to his desk. She doesn't sit. She stands opposite him, resting her palms on the dark wood. I don't need anything from you, according to the agreement. He looks at her, squinting slightly, trying to understand. Then what's the matter? I want to understand, she says, simply and directly. I don't want to be just a contract wife anymore. I don't want to pretend I don't see what's going on here anymore. He is silent. His face does not change. You showed me your deepest secret. You entrusted me with your most precious memory. And today I saw the price of your world, the real price, and I see you bearing it. Alone. She pauses, collecting her thoughts. I'm not asking you to be different. I'm not expecting explanations or justifications, but I can't just watch from the sidelines anymore. If I'm going to stay here, in this house, then I don't want to be a contractual ally. I want to be an ally, even if it's a silent one, but someone who understands, someone who sees. She straightens up. Tell me about everything, not as a boss, not as a contract husband, as a person who is tired of carrying this alone. I want to understand, not to judge, but so you know you are not alone. The silence in the office grows thick, palpable. Ji-hoon doesn't move. He looks at her as if seeing her for the first time. His stony mask, the very one he's worn for years, the one neither threats nor losses have been able to break, suddenly shows a tiny, almost invisible crack. He slowly looks away. He looks at his hands, lying on the table. His fingers are slightly clenched. Understanding is a luxury I cannot afford, he says finally. His voice is quiet, without its usual steel. It sounds ordinary, tired. It's dangerous. For you, for me. I'm already in danger, Avery counters. I'm already here. I've already seen. And I'm staying. It's my choice. Ji-hoon looks up at her. Something flickers in the depths of his dark pupils. The same storm from this morning, but now mixed with something else. With bewilderment, with a tiny, forgotten hope. He looks at her for a long time. A minute, two. Then his gaze falls on the empty chair opposite. Sit down, he says. Not an order, a suggestion. Avery walks around the table and sits down. Ji-hoon leans back in his chair, closes his eyes. When he opens them, he begins to speak. Not from the beginning, not from history. He begins with today, with the numbers in the widow's contract. Then he moves on to the logic behind each number, then to the system that generated this logic. His words flow slowly, evenly, like a report. But this report contains his entire life, his entire terrible, complex, unbearably difficult world. And Avery listens, not as a judge, as an ally, as someone who has chosen to be there. And for the first time in many, many years, Ji-hoon speaks, knowing he's not just being listened to, he's understood. The mask didn't fall, but a crack appeared, and through that crack, in the silence of the late-night office, finally emerged, not the boss, not the trillionaire, not the disabled, but simply a man named Ji-hoon. Ji-hoon speaks. He's not telling the story of his life, he's explaining the system. The way he would explain a complex mechanism. You saw the room. You saw the folders, he begins. His voice is monotone, without intonation. This isn't charity. This is accounting. Very precise. Every action in my business has a cost that others pay. Sometimes that cost is money. More often, it's something else. Health, freedom, the future. My job is to calculate that cost and compensate. Whenever possible. He pauses, looking at the lamp. The Minseo family. His price was the highest. His life. But there are others, smaller ones. Some lose their businesses because of our market pressure. We provide capital for a new one, in a different area. Some end up in the hospital after an incident involving our people. We pay for treatment and rehabilitation. The best. We send our children to study abroad, so they can escape this cycle. What if they don't want your help? Avery asks quietly. What if they just want to be left alone? Jihoon looks at her, something akin to sadness appearing in his gaze. They have no choice. Just like I don't. Accepting help means admitting the account is closed, that there are no claims. It's a tacit agreement. Refusal. Refusal is seen as a desire to continue the conflict. That can't be allowed. The balance must be restored. At any cost. Avery feels her insides turn cold. It's cruel, but there's a twisted logic to that cruelty. And those who attack today? Will their bills be paid too? No, Zihoon answers sharply. They attacked first. They violated the borders. Their debt is to me, and they will repay it. With information, with favors, or with their assets. Their families will not suffer unless they were in cahoots. That's the rule. War is between soldiers, not between children. He says this as an axiom, as the fundamental law of his world. What about you? Avery persists. Do you have a score to settle? With someone? A long pause. Jihoon turns away, looking out the dark window, which reflects the lamplight and their dim silhouettes. He says finally, so quietly she can barely hear, I had to preserve what they built, and make sure their passing wasn't in vain, so that their name would mean something, not just in fear, but in quiet gratitude, so that the history books, if anyone ever opens them, will have more green ink than red. He turns to face her. His face is still stern, but there is a deep weariness in his eyes. And also, in front of that boy, the one who drew that sun. I should have protected him, but I couldn't. Now I protect others, so that he, wherever he is, can think that not everything was in vain. Avery is silent. She understands. He's not talking about physical protection. He's talking about his soul, about that part of himself that was left behind. In the car, in the fire, he's constructing this gigantic, monstrous system of atonement to save that boy from guilt. Guilt that he, the adult Jihoon, doesn't even allow himself to feel. Why did you show me the room? She asks. Why didn't you just forbid me to go there, but arranged it so that I could go in? Jihoon smiles slightly. It's not a happy smile. It's the smile of a man who's put everything on the line. A test, he admits honestly. I needed a barometer, someone from the outside, to look at this and not break, to see not only the horror, but also the necessity. If you had seen only the horror and run away or started blackmailing me, that would have been understandable. I would have been prepared for that. But you saw something else too. You asked why. And today, you came. He looks at her straight. You passed the test, Avery, and now I have a problem. You're no longer just a contract wife. You've become a witness, and witnesses are either eliminated or made part of the system. I don't want to eliminate you, and I won't. So I'm part of the system? Her voice is calm. You want to be an ally, he says. An ally in my world isn't someone who just lives in the house. It's someone who knows the rules and helps maintain balance. It's a risk, every day, for you. I understand that. No, not yet. He shakes his head. Minseo died today. Tomorrow it could be Young Jin. And the day after tomorrow, they could come for you, not to kill, to take control, to put pressure on me. You'll become a target. Are you ready for that? Avery thinks about Kyle, about his new life, the best doctors, hope. She thinks about the choice she made just minutes ago. She's not ready, but she made a choice. I won't ask you to protect me, she says. I'll learn to protect myself, and I'll help you keep your accounts, your real accounts, in that room. His eyes widen. This seems to be the only thing he hadn't foreseen. That's not your job. I have skills, she insists. Attention to detail, perseverance. I've worked with fragile, damaged things, trying to restore them to shape. It's the same thing, only on a different scale. And I won't be doing this for you. I'll be doing it for them, for those families, so that not a single number gets lost, not a single child falls off the list. Jihoon looks at her, and she sees the struggle raging in his eyes, the rational part that weighs the risks, and the part that's so tired of being alone. This can't be officially documented, he finally says. No records, no contracts, just a verbal agreement between us. And you will never, do you hear me, never have any contact with these families. You will only check the numbers, reconcile the reports, make sure the payments are made. Like an auditor, a quiet auditor. Okay, Avery nods. And you'll start training. Simple ones. How to behave in a dangerous situation. How to avoid becoming an easy target. It's mandatory. Fine. He leans back in his chair, running a hand over his face. He looks like he's just finished a very difficult negotiation. And perhaps he has. I don't know what will come of this, he admits. It's not part of the plan. Sometimes the best things aren't part of the plan, Avery says softly. He has no answer to this. He simply looks at her, and for the first time in this conversation, there's no storm or ice in his gaze. There's only quiet, amazed acceptance. Acceptance that a new factor has entered his carefully guarded universe. Unpredictable. Human. Okay, he says finally. We'll start tomorrow. In the morning, Yeonjin will show you the secure communication channels and databases. Under a false name, you'll be checking the quarterly reports for Minseo's fund first. I'll do it, Avery says. She stands up. She feels her legs buckle slightly from the strain. But inside, there's a strange clarity. She's no longer a guest. Not a prisoner. Not a contract wife. She has a role now. A meaning. Dangerous. Terrifying. But her own choice. And Avery? His voice stops her. She turns around. He's still sitting at the table, his face half in shadow. Thank you for asking. For not being completely scared. She nods. She can't find the words. Then she leaves, quietly closing the door behind her. In the hallway, she leans against the wall. Her heart beats fast. She has just crossed a line from which there is no turning back. She has become part of his hidden world, a world of debt, balance, and quiet redemption. She doesn't know what awaits her ahead, but for the first time since the day she entered this cold house, she doesn't feel alone. And neither does he, there in the study. A new stage begins. No contract, no guarantees, just two people and a shared burden they will now bear together, each in their own way. She is like an auditor of human destinies. He is like their judge and treasurer. And in the studio, under the lamp, a child's drawing of a large yellow sun awaits, their common point of reference, a reminder that everything once began simply, and that even the most difficult, the most damaged, can be restored. You just need to find the right approach, and not be afraid to begin. Training takes place in a basement gym. Everything is serious. Young Jin doesn't make any concessions. He shows how to twist his arm if he's grabbed, how to use an attacker's weight against him. Avery tries hard. Her muscles ache, but she doesn't give up. This is her new world. She has to survive in it. That same day, she gains access to the encrypted system. Under the name Veronica, she opens the first folder, the Minseo Family Fund. Numbers, graphs, payment schedules. She studies them carefully. She finds a small error in the interest calculation. She files a correction request. This is her job. Quiet, but important. That evening, Ji-hoon asks about progress. She points out a mistake. He nods approvingly. There's something new in his gaze. Not surprise, but recognition. They rarely touch on personal matters, but their shared work, the drawing, and now this secret financial system, binds them more strongly than any words. He trusts her with the numbers. She sees him, reviewing her edits, sometimes allowing himself a brief, barely noticeable smile. He appreciates her precision. One late night, she can't sleep. She goes down to the studio. The light is on. Ji-hoon is sitting at the table. In front of him is a child's drawing. He simply stares at it. She stands in the doorway, watching. He doesn't notice her. There's no mask on his face, only deep, endless sadness and some fragile hope. She retreats quietly, without disturbing him. She understands that she has become part of something greater than the contract. She has become part of his only chance to remain human. And this may be the most important work of her life. The next day, an uninvited guest arrives, an elderly Korean man with cold eyes. It's Ji-hoon's uncle, Han-soo. He looks at Avery appraisingly, as if she were an object. So this is the one for whom you're giving up your lucrative alliance with the Park family? He says, turning to Ji-hoon. Ji-hoon stands motionless, his face an icy mask. My family decisions are my business, uncle. Family is our shared responsibility, the old man hisses. His gaze slid over Avery. Fragile. It won't last long in our world. She's stronger than she looks, Ji-hoon answers calmly. And that's my final answer. The old man leaves, leaving an icy threat in the air. Avery understands her test is only just beginning, but she's not alone now. She's part of a system, and she has an ally, the most unexpected and powerful of all. Their story is no longer fiction. It has become their shared reality, dangerous and real, and they will protect it together.